Morning, everybody. This is Lucian Smith in for Richard Cross here on Mornings on SuperTalk Mississippi. With us here on the line is Jim Leggett with Mississippi State University. How are you doing, Professor Leggett?
Great. How about yourself this morning, Lucian?
I am doing well. It has to be an interesting time to be teaching economics, I would think.
Yeah, like I sometimes tell my students, the good news is you can often find stuff about this stuff in the Wall Street Journal and the media outlets. But that's also the bad news because no one cares about the dismal science when things are going well. And in fact, as I was kind of listening to you guys chat, I was making some notes to try to organize myself. And you probably can't see, but I got a full page of notes just kind of scribbling.
Well, let's start with that. How did Lance and I do? If we were in a discussion group in your course, would we have done okay?
I enjoyed discussion. I thought it was good. I thought you guys raised some of the things I was thinking about and concerned about, and I think it is kind of interesting times. And one of the notes I kind of made for myself, based on what you guys were talking about, there, at least in my lifetime, there have been three, and now we have four rather significant events in economics. Inflation of the 70s, financial crisis 2008, COVID and inflation, and now we got number four.
Right.
Tariffs, and there's some historical precedent we can talk about if you guys want to. But whatever happens, we will be talking about this for a long time, and there are going to be books written. Maybe I'll have enough energy to write one or at least read one.
I mean, is there a historical precedent for this in the sense
Yes.
of moving away from free trade to back to sort of a mercantilist economic policy?
In fact, the Wall Street Journal wrote about it today. Go to the 1930s. There was something called the Smoot-Hawley Tariff, and they raised tariffs. I'm trying to remember what I read just a few moments ago, from like less than single digits. It can't be less than single digits. I'm going to say single digits into the mid-20s. The story was kind of the Great Depression. Our industries are getting clobbered. We're going to put tariffs on, and we'll be okay. What immediately happened, the Europeans say, "Oh no, you don't," and they hit back hard, and which is what you would expect. And the disconcerting thing is, there are many people, and I'm going to put Milton Friedman up there on the top, believe that and Fed policy made the Great Depression the Great Depression. And what's interesting, Europeans backed off fairly quickly. U.S. did not. Europeans recovered quicker. So we've seen that movie. What's interesting, aside from the fact, if you remember Ferris Bueller's Day Off, with Ben Stein is droning on about something.
Yeah.
He talks about the Smoot-Hawley tariffs. But what's interesting is the way they did tariffs in Smoot-Hawley with the legislators. I can't remember whether they're senators, but it's not important for the story. Is as it got closer and closer to reality, the stock market went down, 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 down. And I think what you guys were talking about, now you can like the stock market or not as an indicator, but markets hate uncertainty. And we have uncertainty on up there like at the financial crises. And I'm sure there are people, say at the Wall Street Journal on Wall Street, darn it, I got to go read some economic history. So we've seen it before. It doesn't work real well. And I think the other thing we got to remember is the system, I'll call it the whole entire international system, was something the United States, I'm going to use the word imposed, but I'm going to put it in quotes, set up after World War II to try to foster trade. And a lot of this stuff came about because of that. The United States is in a unique position because we are the big kid, we are the reserve currency. And the thing that's gotten lost in this, if you're a chronic debtor, the way the math works is you're also going to chronically run a trade deficit. So if I am, say, some other countries, hey, don't screw with our markets. You're the ones who need our money, and the consequence of that is you run a trade deficit. It's as Paul Ryan once said, it's math. So, and that's why. So I get, and So that's a short answer.
Well, I know
Probably
there's no way
longer
to
than
know.
you wanted.
No. I think it's just such a. I feel like lately there's been so much that's been quote unprecedented, but this is something people have really nobody alive has lived through this kind of shift in the U.S. If you had to guess, and I know it's speculation, but what does this end up doing economically if these stay in place for the next 12, 24 months?
Well, I think there are two effects. While I'm not the biggest fan of John Keynes, I still think he has great insights. I think his disciples took his ideas too far. But one of the things he talked about in economics is the animal spirits, psychology, and what we've seen in the stock market right now. People are afraid. And when people are afraid, they don't do anything. Businesses say, you know what? I'm not sure I want to expand this plant yet. I'm going to sit on the sidelines. Or, you guys were talking about housing a little bit earlier. Hey, honey, that new house we wanted? Well, the money we're going to put down for down payment just went poof. And I'm not sure I'm going to have a job tomorrow because my business exports or imports. And so that these kind of massive falls in the stock market often. Now, notice I said often, not always, because it's economics. Usually, often precipitate something bad happening. You think to the biggest falls in the stock market or driven 2 or 3 days after we shut down the world for COVID, and we know how that played. You guys were talking about fall of 2008 stock market crash is too strong a word, but went precipitously down. And your challenge, you guys are talking about investing, is to sort out what is just the noise versus, whoa, the rules have been changed. I don't know what they are, and I think I don't like them. And that's what we're sorting through. And your point is very valid. We have never rearranged the international trading system like that. After World War II, it's kind of easy. It's like we're the only kids standing. So Brits,
right.
Let me explain this to you. This is how it's done. There was the conference where they worked it out, and the Brits had all kinds of things they wanted, and they would just kind of sit home with the tail between their legs because, hey, you guys are broke.
Right.
So we'll see.
We were talking, it seems like my sense, and this hadn't been so explicit from what I've seen, but that there seem to be two schools of thought in the people who are around the president. That one group, I think, wants to use these tariffs as a way of renegotiating trade deals that are in place, having freer, fairer trade, and then another group that kind of wants to go back to the 1950s in terms of most things being manufactured in the U.S. and fewer imports. And I'm curious how realistic you think it is for us to return to that second model where we're manufacturing much more in the U.S. than we do currently.
I think it's unrealistic. That comment, I think the Secretary of Commerce said, well, people putting million screws in iPhones, and we want those jobs to come to the U.S. Now, I'm going to say, no, you don't. Those are low-skill jobs. And like it or not, the world of the 1950s is not coming back.
Right.
And I think something that's missed about this manufacturing discussion, U.S. share of manufacturing for about the last 50 to 60 years, it's been around, I'm going to say it's 18%, but it's a constant number. But the economy's gotten bigger. So it says, okay, we're still making stuff, but you're doing it with less people. And unless you're that guy, auto worker that's been unemployed, it's good for everybody else. And I'm kind of okay with people in China taking little screws and putting them in iPhones as long as we're doing AI stuff. Now, what we got to be careful about is, I think you kind of stumbled across that, is manufacturing. It's important, but the future is AI and stuff like that. China's investing heavily in AI. They may say, okay, you can put the screws in the iPhones. We're going to do the AI. Some fellow was writing, Thomas Friedman was writing about that. And they took him around to where they're doing a lot of cutting edge AI research, and that's where the future is. 1950s are gone and not coming back,
Right. No, I think that's
And
exactly right.
and by the way, that's okay.
Right. Well, as best I can tell, everybody is wealthier now. I mean, not everybody, but in the aggregate, the country is far wealthier now on an individual basis than we were 70 years ago. You
And
got
that's
time
the
to stick with
important fact to
us?
remember. Absolutely, Carl. I'm enjoying the conversation.
Well,
And we
thank
only
you.
got through half my sheet.
There we go. Y'all, this is Lucian Smith in for Richard Cross here on Mornings on SuperTalk Mississippi. Stick with us for more after this. Well, this is Lucian Smith in for Richard Cross here on Mornings on SuperTalk Mississippi. Still with us on the line is Professor Jim Leggett. How do you see this playing out? I mean, what does the next 6 months look like for the American economy?
It's a roller coaster. I guess the way I would kind of think about it is, countries say like Vietnam say, sure, we'll drop the tariffs, no big deal, because otherwise you just killed the Vietnamese economy. But the big kids will say, oh, wait a minute, no, we're not accepting you unilaterally changing the terms of the deal. And I think the way to kind of think about this is when a war starts, be it shooting, be it trade, be it price, you never really know how it plays out. And I guess the fear is somebody someplace miscalculates or bluffs and it gets out of hand. And we think about wars, price wars. And so I think we're in for a period of uncertainty, as you guys were talking about. If you're worried about your volatility in the stock market, don't look at your statement every day. It's going to drive you nuts. I think the other thing you'll see when in a rising stock market, everybody thinks they can day trade and retire and live happily after. And then when it goes downwards, they find out, wait a minute, this is hard. I just lost real money. So I guess what I would advise folks, or advise is not the right word. If you're looking at what's happening, it's going to be volatile. There's going to be tits for tat. As we get into, I'll call it these kind of exchanges, both parties, have to project a strong image for a variety of reasons. And humans being humans, you don't want to be perceived as the guy that blinked. I kind of think about game theory, or games is a way to kind of think about it. Lucian makes a move. Lance makes a move, Jim makes a move, and then I find out Lucian didn't do what I thought he was going to do, and so it's probably it certainly will be an interesting exercise in international economic deal making. I think like most wars, typically everybody loses. So
right.
I mean that's how it works. I mean, about the only one that really wins is the arms manufacturer, but I'm not sure.
That's a good point.
And so I guess it's buckle up your seatbelt, or use whatever analogy you want to use. It's storm's coming. I have no idea how it's going to end. As you pointed out, the mercantilism of the 1500s ended. That's why Spain is not a major economic player. And we'll find out whether 300 years worth of economic thought, including Adam Smith, David Ricardo, and Milton Friedman are right, or somebody else. I kind of put my money on those guys, just as I put my money on Isaac Newton for gravity.
That's right. I do wonder, and I know there's no way to know this with absolute certainty, but do you get the sense watching the White House, do they have an end game in mind?
It's not obvious to me. If you accept their surface words, they're looking, and you kind of touched upon it, a world that maybe never existed, but the America of the 1950s, that world doesn't exist, partially because in the 1950s, we were the only ones standing as a practical matter. And we went out our way to make sure Germany, Japan, and Europe were vibrant, partially because we already had 2 world wars. We don't want to go do it again. And so I don't know whether it's nostalgia for something. I don't know. And maybe that's the problem. Not that I'm supposed to be read in on. But to your point is, what is victory? World War II is easy. You captured Berlin, you captured Tokyo. This one, I don't know. what victory is, other than a world that I don't think exists or can exist. And if it does, some of the more pessimistic says, well, great, you just ceded the next 100 years, world to the economy because you started a war you can't win. And that may be the answer. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a frightening time for a lot of reasons, and then I assume we should expect the price of most goods to go up during this time. I mean, correct? Tariffs are inherently inflationary.
Well, it's a tax, and that's also it's a tax on the consumers of imported goods. And I think I saw this is the largest tax increase in history.
Wow.
I don't know whether that's right, but it wouldn't surprise me. And then the other thing to ponder, I'm holding up iPhone. We think it's Chinese, assembled in China, as they say, designed in California, with parts from 80 countries. So what's that imported good anymore? I don't know.
Right.
Ponder your car.
Just pure American manufacturing.
And we're talking about the 1930s. That world, you knew the answer.
That's right. Well, Professor Leggett, thank you for taking the time to be with us. We're coming up on a break, but this has been a good conversation, and appreciate your taking the time.
Take care, Lucian. Lance, see you later. See you guys next time.
Hey, that sounds great. Y'all, that's been Professor Jim Leggett with Mississippi State University. This is Lucian Smith in for Richard Cross here on Mornings on SuperTalk Mississippi. Stick with us. We'll have Mike Hurst, the chairman of the Mississippi Republican Party. But coming up next is Fox News, followed by SuperTalk Mississippi News.